Hey everybody, welcome to the video. It's Parker from Test Prep Champions, and I'm so glad that you're joining me here, so thank you so much. This is going to be worth your while. I'm going to do a video here about four-sided plane figures. So at this point in your GED studying, you might be getting the basics down, the algebra, the equations, but when it comes to geometry, perhaps you feel like you're a little bit behind. Maybe even you're starting to panic because your test date is coming up and you haven't done much geometry yet. But at any rate, don't worry, I'm going to show you what you need to know about squares, rectangles, parallelograms, and trapezoids. We're going to look at some examples together. Don't worry, keep your head up, we're going to get through this. So I do try to make these videos fun and entertaining, but geometry is kind of dull, so I'm going to let the cat take it away, try to entertain you a little bit, and we're just going to jump right in with the squares. Okay, so we're going to start off by looking at a square, and hopefully you remember what squares look like, but if not, there's a big square right in the center of the screen. And so there's really three main points that I want you to take away from this. So first of all, a square is a kind of rectangle, and if you haven't seen a rectangle in a little while, I'm going to show you that in a minute. So tuck number one away in the back of your mind. Number two is that all four sides of the square are the same length. So I'm going to draw these little lines here on each of the sides, and that just represents the fact that all four sides are the same length. So you're probably going to see these little line things in your textbooks and in your practice problems. They're probably going to look a little bit nicer than my writing, but just note that that represents the fact that all four sides are the same length. And so the last point that I want you to know about squares is that each corner has a 90-degree angle in it. Okay, so I'm drawing these little box type things to show you that there's a 90-degree angle in each of the four corners of the square. So for all four-sided plane figures, like a square, the interior angles all add up to 360 degrees. So if you add these up, 90 plus 90 plus 90 plus 90, you're going to get 360. All right, so that's about it for the square for right now. Let's move on. Let's look at the rectangle next. Okay, so we're on to the rectangle. So a rectangle has four sides, and each side there's going to be four right angles. So just like the square, there's going to be a right angle in each corner. So I'm going to draw these box type things, and hopefully this is sticking by now because I've said it a billion times, but if not, just remember that these little box type things just tell you that there's a 90-degree angle. So you're going to see these in your practice tests and in your real test and in your material, so that's all that means. And so rule number three here, the third thing that you need to know about rectangles is that all of the angles add up to 360. So again, 90, 90, 90, 90, add those up, you get 360. Okay, so the main difference between a square and the rectangle is that with the rectangle, the sides are not all equal length, right? So the sides that are across from each other have equal length and they're parallel. So this side up here and this side down here are of equal length. Okay, so that's why I put a single slash up here and a single slash down there. Okay, and so I'm going to put two slashes over here on this side and two slashes over here on this side. Okay, so this side right here and this side over here, the slides with the double slashes, those are equal, and the sides with the single slashes, those are equal as well. So you'll probably see it written like this in your textbooks or in your practice tests, so that way you'll know what it means. Again, it'll probably look a little bit nicer than my handwriting now. Okay, that's about it for rectangles. Okay, so we're now up to the parallelogram. So parallelogram, it's easier to understand how it works than it is to say, believe me. But the first thing that you want to note about the parallelogram is that the opposite sides are equal in length and they're parallel. Okay, so I'm going to give a slash here and a slash here to let you guys know that these sides are equal in length. And likewise, I'll do the double slashes on this side and this side so that we know that the double slash sides are equal in length. Okay, now in the case of a rhombus, which I'm not going to show a picture of, but a rhombus is just a parallelogram that all four sides are equal. Okay, so just tuck that in the back of your mind. A rhombus is a type of parallelogram that all four sides are equal. So in this case, the sides aren't all equal, but the sides across from each other will always be equal in length. And so the other cool thing about a parallelogram that's helpful for problem solving is to note that the opposite angles are equal. So let's look at this angle here. Let's say that this is angle A. I'm going to draw an angle here. Okay, so let's say that angle A is, let's say it's 120 degrees. So 120, and then this little circle here means degrees. Okay, and so here's angle B, and let's say that we don't know what angle B is. Okay, how do we figure out what angle B is? Well, rule number 2 tells us that opposite angles are equal. So if we know that angle A is 120 degrees, then we just look at the opposite angle. Okay, you just go diagonally right across the parallelogram and you'd say that, okay, well, angle B must also be 120 degrees. Okay, let me get rid of that, clean this up just a little bit. And likewise, okay, so this angle up here, all right, we can call it C, call it whatever you want, doesn't matter. This angle here, we'll call this D. Okay, these angles are going to be equal as well. So that's probably the most important point about the parallelogram, is that the opposite angles are equal, because most problem-solving questions that you get with a parallelogram, they're going to try to trick you, but it's probably 9 times out of 10, it's just going to be a question about opposite angles. Okay, you might have to do some algebraic manipulations, which I'll get to. I'll show you an example, but this is what you want to know, and as always, with any four-sided plane figure, the interior angles will add up to be 360 degrees. Okay, so unlike a square and a rectangle, these angles aren't necessarily, they're not going to be 90 degrees. Okay, they could be, like I said, this could be 120. It doesn't matter, you don't know what it is just by looking unless they give it to you, but the point is that they're all going to add up to 360 degrees. All right, so that's parallelograms. My fiance, everyone, she was passing through and I wanted to get her on camera real quick. And so now we're going to move on to the trapezoids. Okay, so with the trapezoid, there's going to be one pair of parallel sides, and the other thing to note is that we don't know the measure of the angles or side lengths from the definition. So all I mean by that is that if you recall the parallelogram, right, we knew that with the angles, the opposite angles were going to be equal. So if you knew one of the angles, you could look at the opposite angle, and you'd also know the degrees for that angle as well. Okay, but we're not going to be able to do that with the trapezoid unless you're given more information. So that's all I mean by number 2. And as always, for a trapezoid, for all four-sided figures, the interior angles will add up to 360 degrees. So just burn that picture of the trapezoid into your head, and that's really all you need to know about it. So we're going to move on with some examples now. That covers all of the four-sided plane figures. So we're going to start off with a great problem here. This is a tough one, and you're probably going to see something like this on the GED math section, so you might as well learn it now. Go ahead if you want, pause the video. If not, that's fine too, and then we're going to go over how you should do it. Okay, so that was a little break. Hopefully you paused the video, you got a chance to work on this, but if not, that's fine too. You got to start somewhere, right? So here's what we need to remember about the parallelogram. So example 1 says that figure ABCD is a parallelogram. What is the measure of angle B? So this angle right here, B, is what we really want to find. So remember that in any four-sided figure, like a parallelogram, the sides are all the angles are all going to add up to 360. Okay, so we know right off the bat, just by the definition of the parallelogram, that if we do A plus B plus C plus D, we know that these angles are going to add up to 360 degrees. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to see an algebraic equation taking place here that we can use to get the answer, and if not, that's fine too. Don't be discouraged. We'll get through this one. And so we know C, and because of the parallelogram, the opposite angles are going to be equal, right? So since we know that C is 100 degrees, okay, we look at the angle that's diagonal from it, or opposite from it, right? So we look over at A, and so since these are opposite angles, we know that A must also be 100 degrees. Okay, so up into our equation, we know that A and we know that C are going to be 100 degrees. Okay, so we can rewrite this now as we've got 100 plus B plus 100 plus D equals 360. Okay. I'm going to leave off the degrees for right now. So we also know that B and D are going to be equal, okay? So if we don't know what B is, then we also don't know what D is because B and D are opposite angles, okay? They're opposite angles and they're diagonal from each other. So if we don't know what B is, we also don't know what D is, but we do know that B and D are equal. So for right now, let's just make a variable. So let's just say that they're both equal to X. Okay, we'll use X as our variable, and I'm going to get rid of that question mark. And if you're having trouble following this algebra or having trouble following the equation that I'm setting up, I do have another video on how to solve single-step and multi-step equations. So you'll want to watch that. That's going to help make a lot of sense over what I'm doing here. But basically, what we now are going to do is, in our equation, we're going to replace B and we're going to replace D with X. Okay, because they're both equal. So 100 plus 100 is 200. So I'm going to draw an arrow here, meaning that I'm rewriting the problem to make it a little bit more neater. So this is a 2. We've got 200, and we got that 200 because we did 100 plus 100. Okay, plus 2x. 200 plus 2x. And the reason it's 2x is because, remember, I said that angle D and angle B, we're going to let the length of those angles, we're going to let that, or the degree of those angles, we're going to let that equal x. Okay, so this B and the D, we're going to let equal x. Okay, so x plus x is 2x. So that's why I have the 2x here. So we've got 200 plus 2x. That's equal to 360. So now we can do a little bit of basic math here, and we can subtract 200 from both sides. And again, you'll want to check out that other video if you're having trouble with the algebra here. So we've got 200 subtracted from both sides. Okay, and so the 200's gone here. So we've now got 2x is equal to, and here's a nice subtraction problem. So the way you do this is the zeros are going to come down. We got 6 down, 3 minus 2 is 1. So we've got 2x equals 160. 2x equals 160. Okay, and from here, we see that we've got 2 multiplied by x. That's equal to 160. So what we want to do is we want to isolate this x. We want to isolate the variable by itself on one side. So since 2 is being multiplied by x, we get rid of this 2 by dividing. So we divide by 2 on this side. And whenever you're solving an equation, you always want to remember that whatever you do to one side, you always must do that to the other. Okay, so you do 2x divided by 2, and so you also do that to this side. So you divide this by 2 as well. Okay, and then what we find is that x equals 80, right? Because 80 plus 80 is 160. Okay, so x is equal to 80. So what that tells us is that this angle here, okay, is going to be equal to 80. And we also found, the question only told us to find angle B, but we also found angle D as well, right, because they're equal. And if you want to check this, what you can always do is, so we know that, we'll check it real quick, so we know that A and C, so we know that all sides have to add up to 360, right? So 100 plus 100, that's going to be 200, okay? So we've got 200, and 80 plus 80 is what, 160, okay, and 200 plus 160 gives us 360, so that's a good way to check it. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense. If not, you'll definitely want to go back over this, rewind it, and watch this a couple times until you understand how to do this problem, because this is the kind of problem that you might get, you very well might get something like this. But the point that I really wanted to get across here is that you got to understand the basics of each of these 4 plane figures, and then once you do that, it's pretty much, you can just use algebra to do basic algebraic manipulations to solve for whatever you want. So what I did was, we knew that all 4 angles were going to add up to 360. And so we set up this equation here, A plus angle B plus angle C plus angle D is going to be 360. And we knew from the start that C and A were going to be equal to 100. So that's why I put into the equation, I put in 100 for A, and I put in 100 for C. Okay. And so then we didn't know what b was, so we called b x. So we made b a variable. We made that x. And since b and d are opposite angles, we know that in a parallelogram, opposite angles are equal. So therefore, d was equal to x as well. So then we put in x for b and x for d here. So we added that together to get 2x. So we now had 100 plus 100 plus 2x. And we used algebra. We subtracted from 200 from both sides. We had 2x equals 160. We divide by 2 on both sides. X equals 80, and then we checked it. Okay, so that's a mouthful. Almost as tough as saying the word parallelogram. Try to say that 10 times fast. That'll be interesting. But the point here is that it's not really that bad. You just have to understand your basic algebra. So again, you can always go back and watch that other video. In fact, I'd recommend it. I'll definitely link to that if this was tricky for you. But we're going to move on with a couple more examples. But this was probably the hardest one, I would say. So if you understand this, you're probably already in good shape. Okay, so here's the next example, and since you guys are really good, I decided to throw you guys an extra hard question. So if you thought that last one was hard, this one's also pretty tricky. So go ahead, pause the video, try it out on your own if you want, but you guys are really good. I'm sure you can get it. And if not, don't be discouraged. Don't hang your head. We're going to get through this. So we'll get through this one together. So example 2 says that angle B is twice the measure of angle C. Angle A is equal to 40 degrees more than twice the measure of angle C. If angle D is equal to 100 degrees, what is the measure of angle C? Okay, so whenever you've got a question like this, whether it's a word problem or just a really lengthy question, always first really zoom in on what you're supposed to find. Because it's easy to read a question like this and come away from it cross-eyed with your tongue tied, not sure what you're supposed to find. So before you start solving it, be clear on what you're trying to find. So in this case, we want to find angle C. So this angle right here on our trapezoid is angle C. So you also have to recognize that this is a trapezoid, and just pretend, we're going to pretend that the sides and the angles don't all look like they're the same length. So let's use our imagination here a little bit. But this is a trapezoid, so hopefully, remember I said to burn that into your memory bank. Hopefully you understood that this was a trapezoid. But the most important thing is that this is a plane figure. And so for plane figures, we know that all of the angles are going to add up to 360 degrees. So before we even do anything else, we can write the following equation. Okay, so like I said, hopefully you paused the video, you got a chance to try this on your own. If not, then at any point as I go along here with the approach to solving this problem, you can pause it, try it again on your own, as if you get stuck on a certain step. So A plus B plus C plus D is going to be 360 degrees. Okay, so hopefully you at least got that far on your own. But if not, like I said, we're going to get through it. Don't worry. So what we really want to find is angle C. But let's look at the information that we were given to see what's going to help us out here. So angle B is twice the measure of angle C. So we can write the following equation. So B is equal to twice the length, twice the measure of angle C. So B is going to be equal to 2C. Okay. Angle A is equal to 40 degrees more than twice the measure of angle C. Okay, so angle A is equal. So that part of the question tells us that we can write A and write the equal sign here. Angle A is equal to 40 degrees more, and the word more tells us that we want to add. So we do 40 degrees more than twice the measure of angle C. So 40 plus 2C. And we're also told that angle D is 100 degrees. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to see how this is all going to come together. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this information for A, and we're going to plug it back up into our big equation here. And same with B. So the question told us that B is equal to 2C. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to plug it into our big equation here. Okay, and also we know that D is equal to 100 because it tells us that right here. So we're going to plug that in for D. And so this question works out really nicely. It's really beautiful actually, because what we're going to have is we're going to be working in terms of C. So we're going to be working in terms of just one variable. So whenever you get a question like this, you'll always want to, the trick is to get it down to one variable. Use your algebra to solve for that variable. Okay, so let me write this out here. So we've got 40 plus 2C. So I'm going to use this space down here in the corner. So 40 plus 2c. Okay. Doing pretty good so far. So like I said again, so I'm just taking this part of the equation, a equals 40 plus 2c. And where did that come from? Well, that came because it tells us here that angle A is equal to 40 degrees more than twice the measure of angle C. So from that information we wrote this A equals 40 plus 2C, and we're plugging that in for A. So that's what I did here. Okay, so we've got our A. So B is equal to 2C. So B equals 2C. So in the equation now what I can do is, in place of B, I'm just going to write in 2C. Okay, so I'm going to write in 2C. Okay, so let me try to illustrate this another way. So this is A, right? So this 40 plus 2C, that is equal to A, and this 2C, that's equal to B. Okay, and again, that B comes because it tells us right off the bat, angle B is twice the measure of angle C. So if B is equal to 2C, this is the little equation that we would write from that. Okay, and again, I keep harping on this other video, but if you're having trouble with turning these words into equations, you'll want to watch that because I cover that in that as well. And we know that, okay, so C is just going to be C. So we've got plus C. And we know that D is equal to 100 because it tells us that in the question. So we're going to put plus 100 right here. Okay, and so this is all still equal to what? To 360. Okay, so now what we can do is we can combine like terms. So we're going to do 2C plus 2C plus C. 2 plus 2 is 4, plus another 1 is going to be 5. So we've got 5C. We're going to go down here, we've got 5C. And 100 plus 40 is 140, so plus 140. And this is all still equal to 360. Okay, so at this point, what we're going to do is we'll pull out our algebra skills. So we've got 5C plus 140. So we want to isolate the variable here. So the variable is our C. Okay, so whenever there's something in an algebraic equation that you're not sure what it is, we just call it a variable. So that's what the C is. So we've got 5C plus 140 equals 360. So what we do is we want to clear out the 140. Okay, so we get the 5C by itself on the left-hand side of the equation. And so we've got plus 140, so we do the opposite operation, which is subtraction. So we're going to subtract 140, and we've got to do that to the other side as well. And as always, I'm going to rewrite this. So we've got 5C. Now we've got 5C, and that's going to be equal to 360 minus 140. So 3 minus 1 is going to be 2. Okay, 6 minus 4 is going to be 2. So you've got 220. 5C equals 220. Okay, and so now what we're going to do is we've got to get the C by itself. So that's what we're trying to do. We want to get that variable by itself. So 5 is multiplied by C. Okay, so in order to get the C by itself, we're going to do the opposite. So we're going to divide, we're going to do the opposite operation, okay, or the reciprocal, which is another way to say it. So the reciprocal operation to multiplication is division. So we are going to divide by 5 on this side, and whatever you do to one side, you always do that on the other side, okay? And so we do 5. So 5 divided by 5 is going to be 1. 1 times C is just C. So we've got C equals 220 divided by 5. And let me toss that in the calculator real quick. 220 divided by 5. That's going to be 44. Okay. And so the answer, so C is going to equal 44. C is 44. So if you pause the video and if you work that out on your own, give yourself a big pat on the back, give yourself a round of applause. That's really good work. If not, give yourself a round of applause, give yourself a pat on the back for trying anyway, and just for being here following this video. Because by doing that, you should be proud of yourself, whether you got it right or not, because, hey, you're getting closer to passing the GED math section, right? That's why we're really here. So hopefully you understood that question. again, it really comes down to the basic algebra skills. So these geometry questions, you really do have to still have a basic understanding of algebra and how to write equations. So all you had to do was you first had to recognize that this is a trapezoid. It's a four-sided plane figure, so therefore it's going to equal 360. You had to know that all of the angles are going to add up to 360. So that's why I started off with this here. Okay, that A plus B, angle A plus angle B plus angle C plus angle D is going to be 360. Okay, so hopefully just really burn that right into your memory bank. Really drill that in your head because that's very important. And so then, just from reading the question, we got this B equals 2C, A equals 40 plus 2C. We substituted the 40 plus 2C in for A, and the 2C we substituted that in for B, and we knew from the question that D is equal to 100, so we just wrote this long algebraic equation, we combined the like terms, and we just solved it out from there, and we got this C equals 44. Hopefully you got that. So that's going to be the video. These are two harder examples, so you're probably, if you understood these, if you really get how I did these problems, then you should be good to be able to reason your way through any variation that you'll see on the test. There might be some other variations of these four-sided plane figures, but if you got these, you should be good to go for the most part. You'll definitely want to get the books, get some practice in. But thanks again for watching this video. Thanks for staying tuned through this whole video. Really hope that this was helpful for you. Like I said, it's not going to get much harder than this. These were two of the harder questions. So make sure you get these down, understand these concepts, and you should be good to go. So thanks again. This is Parker from Test Prep Champions. I wish everybody watching the best of luck for your test prep. Let me know how you do. And if you have any questions or if there's anything that I was not clear about, let me know. And thanks again so much. I hope to see you back here on other videos.